quick explanation is basically that we're going to go through. Marley's going to be the next cab off the rank. She's going to give us a bit of a rundown of where we sit legislatively with our iwi partners in the various pieces around regional council. And then we're going to come out to those councillors that have actually sat on JMAs to hear some input on them, good, bad and ugly, what works, what doesn't, etc. And then also with input from Victoria as we move through that space, just on things she's seen in other organisations that may help us with our relationship building and that sort of thing. And so we'll see how all that comes together. So over to you, Marley.
Kia ora, Chair, and thank you, Victoria, for being flexible. Yep, no problem. How's that? Better? Cool. Well, bear with me. This reframing of the way that we're going to use our time together means I am on a bit of I'm on the hop, basically. And we have sourced a PowerPoint presentation that was being prepared for a kōrero that we were going to have with council at a later date. So I hope that the slides that we've prepared cover all the things that we want to talk about today. Let's go with it. So an overview of council iwi relationships. What I'm hoping this PowerPoint includes is an overview of all of our treaty settlement obligations that require us to enter into co-governance and co-management arrangements. An overview of mana whakahonoa-rohe initiations we've got currently on the go. And those are the two main things I think that we'll cover today. Let's have a look at what's on the next slide, shall we? Aha, and yes, we're on the right track here with the purpose to explore our wider formal partnerships with Māori, understand the current and upcoming settlement landscape, and yeah, give you the information that you need to engage meaningfully with iwi in those partnerships. Let's have a look at the next slide. So just a high-level explanation of what our legislative requirements are. They are derived from treaty settlements, from the Resource Management Act, particularly in today's kōrero with regard to mana whakahonoa-rohe. Local Government Act also includes general obligations to engage, and Victoria touched on that earlier. The Marine and Coastal Areas Act is another kaupapa that we haven't really talked about too much at the council table, but it is an emerging space for council. We might not get to talk about it today, but we are certainly preparing to have an in-depth conversation about MACA. And various other instruments. Joint management agreements are also a output from treaty settlement obligations, and so we'll dive into that shortly. Next slide. Thanks, Jordan. Okay, here's a map. We like to look at maps when we're talking about areas of interest. As you can see, there are a long list of iwi identified in this map. So ones that you'll be quite familiar with, particularly those councillors who have returned for another term, is through the Waikato and Waipa areas of this map. So we work alongside Raukawa, Waikato Tainui, Tuwharetoa, Maniapoto and Te Arawa River Iwi Trust in that space. But there's a whole a lot more happening in the Hauraki space as well, an area that we're not doing too much at the current time. But we are waiting for the pending collective treaty settlement with Pare Hauraki, at which time our work will ramp up. But also, I guess, mana whakahono arohe are relevant in that space as well, given that Hauraki iwi have initiated that process with us. There are other iwi identified on this map, which we won't get into too much detail on, but as an example, in the central North Island area, Marairoa A and B, and also Pauakani, whilst treaty settlements with those groups don't result in co-management or co-governance obligations, there are statutory acknowledgements for those groups as well. I guess this map shows the complexity within the Waikato rohe, and arguably the Waikato region has the most complexity in relation to treaty settlements across, when compared to other areas in New Zealand. Next slide, please. So talking about the upcoming Pare Hauraki Collective, we have been in a bit of a holding pattern in this regard. I recall having the first conversation with council about the Pare Hauraki Collective settlement way back in 2015. It could have even been earlier. And at that time, we were preparing for the outcome and making sure that as a council, we're ready to go. Because at that time, we thought that settlement was just around the corner, but it's been on pause for many years since. The most recent update or insight that we've heard is we can potentially be expecting this treaty settlement to land sometime next year. We have taken the time to understand what our obligations look like on the other side of this treaty settlement. Essentially, catchment authority or co-governance entity will need to be established. This co-governance entity will include equal number from councils, not just ourselves, but other councils within the Hauraki area, and of course, members from the Pare Hauraki Collective. One of the main jobs immediately required from this group is to develop a catchments plan. And a catchments plan is a high-level strategic document sitting at the regional policy statement level in terms of hierarchy. And there will be timeframes attached to that. I want to say 5 years to develop that. I haven't got the detail at my fingertips, but from my recollection, 5 years to do that job. Council then has the job of deciding whether or not to deem it directly into its regional policy statement. And so it's really important that through the development of the document, we are working very closely with iwi in that space so that when it gets to the decision making on the draft, council is very clear about where it fits within the scheme of the framework.
Will that be, will that settlement include the cost of setting up that organisation that's going to do that work? Because that's sort of what Kanapanap has done, isn't it? If I've got that right.
It is very similar to the work that we've done previously in the Taupōrohe, and I think there might be a slide on that.
Okay.
Good question. The settlement will include some funding from the Crown, a one-off payment to get the work underway and completed. And so for the establishment of the Waiho Piako Coromandel Catchment Authority and the development of that plan, $500,000 will be part of the treaty settlement to fund that work. That funding will be administered by Waikato Regional Council, but it is for the work of the catchment authority.
So that's work for the TAs, iwi, and us to work together to do bring a
To
view
develop,
of everybody at the
Yeah, that's right.
Gary, did you have a question on that?
Marley, is there anything put, or is there any indication yet of what be in the pot for the settlement, for lack of words?
Yep.
Is
There
there
is.
any indication yet for that?
Yep.
And you're getting to it, sorry.
Well, I won't get into it because I don't have the information in front of me, but there is funding identified for the work for the Pare Hauraki Collective. So Pare Hauraki, of course, will get compensation through the treaty settlement, and that is quite separate to the additional funding that the Crown has identified will be released to Waikato Regional Council to fund the work that we're required to do. So there's a number of amounts identified. The first is for that catchments plan that I've just talked about. But there's also a separate amount that will be available to the Regional Council for the Upper Mangatangi and Mangatawhiri Catchment Authority. That authority, as the name suggests, will be established to govern over that small area of Upper Mangatangi and Mangatawhiri. And one of the first things that they will be required to do is develop a JMA. And so there is some funding available separately for that as well.
No.
So I'd like to understand more about this catchment authority, if you've got the detail, because that Mangatangi Mangatawhiri is a really well-organised catchment at the moment amongst landowners. I'm not sure of the depth of engagement with local iwi at the moment, but so that small area, the government has signalled its priority for catchment boards, etc., going forward with this RMA reform, and we await that detail, imminently, hopefully. But also the signal of the demise of regional councils. But taking that demise out of the picture, do we have any indication what those catchment authorities, how they will be set up, and what the detail of what does it remove the council overseeing the work program and the likes? Because you've got, if you talk about JMAs, which normally works on a day-to-day operational basis, is that another step in the process over and above council staff, or is it an independent and the council loses that? It just, what concerns me is another level of authority over somebody else, overseeing, and we get tied up in the talking and not the doing.
Is this something we can take offline, Marley, or a report come back to
Yeah,
ICM?
really,
is that the space it would sit in?
and happy to do that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to bring back a detailed update to whichever committee is best. But just to allay your concerns, the treaty settlement will not result in council, losing its responsibilities and functions within this area. So council will continue to function and to be responsible for all the things it currently is within this area. The authority is a layer of governance. So
you're saying it's just like another JMA?
Similar in that it's governance over the operations of the council.
It's just another level. Yeah, okay.
Would it be a simpler way? It's going to be a JMA, or it'll be similar to a JMA compared to the Waikato River Authority. Is that a better way of putting it? Yeah,
yes, it's
so it's not about flood protection and no, it's about the well-being of keeping the waterway in best environment possible that we can get it to in the future. That's what it's more about.
It's very much about integrated well-being, hence the name of the plan that needs to be developed. It's an integrated catchment management plan. So it is about all those inputs required to maintain healthy waterways within that area. And it does include not just Waikato Regional Council in this co-governance arrangement, it's also the territorial authorities in that space as well. I think as the best example that I can give in terms of what we currently have in place, we do have a similar arrangement in the Lake Taupo area with Ngāti Tūwhareto as a result of their comprehensive settlement. And so we've been operating Te Kōpua Kanapanapa, a co-governance committee, for a number of years now.
And so there'll be one for these, sorry Warren, but Coromandel, and there'll be a separate one over there for Auckland. It's not one for everywhere. So if you see if Hauraki covers Auckland, you've got Ngāti Whātua and a whole lot of others up there.
It won't include any other iwi other than Parehauraki, and for the Upper Mangatangi and Mangatawhiri Catchment Authority, so that's the bit where there is some overlap with other iwi that are up in the Tamaki Makaurau rohe. There is some membership identified for them in that area.
It's going to be complex.
Yep. Cool. So I think I've talked about the main things coming out of the Parehauraki Collective that are identified on this slide. So just in summary, a catchments authority. They will develop a strategic plan that could potentially be deemed into our regional policy statement. What I didn't touch on was there is a, no, actually I won't go into it because there's no bullet point there. And then the other catchment authority over the Upper Mangatangi and Mangatawhiri area with a joint management agreement attached. Next slide.
Just a very good quick question. Could be deemed in, so it's not like Te Tori Whaimana, which is deemed into our regional plan. So it's slightly different arrangement, is it? Yeah.
Slightly different arrangement. It is at council's discretion as to whether or not it deems it straight in.
Right, because the other came part of the treaty settlement was deemed in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Slightly different.
Did you have a question, Robert, just before we move off Harry? Is it? Mike, turn your mic on, please.
The 6 iwi up there, they're the only 6 iwi in Hauraki that are not got any line, or what does that mean? Because you've got the iwi up the top with no area that they're going towards. So are they all related to the circle, or where are they related to?
So
Or are they just all the ones that are?
they're in addition to Parehauraki, I guess. So
That's another.
yeah, they're not in the Parehauraki Collective, but they are iwi that are surrounding that
Overlapping.
area and have
Okay.
and have some interest in that
Thank you.
area
I
as
just
well.
wanted to clear that up.
Marley, did you just want to touch while we're on Hauraki with the mana whakahono arohi that we've had come to us? Just, I mean, we've got the 4 new councillors sitting around the table now. Did you want to speak to that high level, or we can leave that for another day?
Yep. There might be a slide coming up, but
We don't have to.
the only thing I don't want to get wrong is naming the correct
Right. Okay.
Hauraki iwi that have initiated, because there are a number of Hauraki that are part of the Parehauraki Collective, but not all have initiated the mana whakahono arohe. So when the slide comes up, I'm sure it will have a list of all those that have initiated the mana whakahono arohe. We're jumping now to joint management agreements with JMA partners. Our current joint management agreements are with 5 river iwi, Waikato, Tenehenehenui, Raukawa, Te Aroa River iwi, and Tūwhareto Māori Trust Board. The statutory driver for these agreements are from the Waikato and Waipa River settlement legislation. So there's 3 pieces of legislation there that brings in our 5 Waikato River iwi. Next slide, please. The scope of the joint management agreements. So at a high level, I guess, The joint management agreement set out the way that we will work together, how we're going to communicate together. It emphasises working together in good faith, and it also is the reason why we have co-governance ×5, because our joint management agreements agree to that.
There for a moment, please, Marley. So
Yep.
can I just comment? So my view of the JMAs are that they are a document that discusses the operational context of the relationship between individual iwi and the regional council. So how council works with iwi on a day-to-day basis. The co-governance, which seems to get up people's nose, is actually a lot of nonsense around it. In the agreement, it states that at least once and up to 4 times a year, depending on the agreement, that the governors will come together from each organisation and have a look at what's going on and make recommendations to council should that be necessary. The word co-governance derives from the governors of each organisation. It's not about decision making. And so therefore, people don't need to be afraid of the co-governance arrangements because it's quite specific. Should the governors want to see some tweaks or questions or challenge what's happening operationally, that is the mechanism in which, hey, you want to consider this. It's not about directing and making decisions that control the operational arm of council. It's a recommending body that comes back to council, and council could say, yep, we like that, or no, we're not, and for this reasons. So that's my view of the world of co-governance. Really want to get that really well understood. People can disagree with me, and I'm happy about that.
We're used to it.
Yeah, but my way's right. So, in all seriousness, we need to get this sorted in people's minds and have a collective view of the same going forward, so that we don't have the endless discussions about co-governance that we had last term. We don't need it. We have a good understanding of what the co-governance in relation to the JMAs is, then we can move on and move forward. Thank you. And I'm happy to be challenged. Thank you.
Thanks, Noel. Keith.
Yeah, just following on from Noel's comments, and it's just, Marley, it's just clarity on those JMAs and that thing. So to me, co-governance means equal number of people in a room with 2 different directives in terms of what happens there. Now, in terms of the recommendations to the council, does it have to be a 51% vote, or does it have to be a 75% vote? Because to me, the risk of co-governance, conceptually in my mind, is you have what you had last year in the last triennium, a split board all the time.
Recommendations that tend to come from co-governance are generally consensus. We don't find ourselves in a situation where recommendations coming from co-governance are split. And that really was the intention of our co-governance committees right from the beginning. The co-governance committees also adopted their special, unique standing orders that required consensus decision making. So you're not going to get recommendations coming to council that aren't fully supported by both iwi that sit at the table and Waikato Regional Councillors that sit at the table. Then when any recommendations do come through to council, our normal meeting processes apply, and so that requires a majority vote.
Thanks, Marley. So, Keith, also those terms of references within inside those JMAs all have resolution processes and that sort of thing. So if the group themselves can't get to a decision, they have a resolution process that they can go through. So as Marley stated, generally the recommendations that come through from those JMAs have full support out of that JMA, and that's how it comes together. Robbie.
Just going back to Noel's point, I 100% agree with what Noel said. The only thing, just before the election, we were sitting on the Wairoa committee, and Waiora, sorry. Oh, Jesus. The word, they asked a couple of us councillors to define what co-governance meant to us. So we had to give our opinion, yet iwi sitting around the table goes, that's it. After they asked me the question, personally, because they said, you're standing for rates control team. So I got it in the neck. And then I said, well, how about you define it? And they said, that's for another discussion. So I think for us all to feel safe in that thing as councillors, as the regional council, co-governance, what it means should be defined. And that what Noel defined it as before is what it should be defined as. And I think that's fair, because then there is no coming out and going, the public, what does co-governance mean? If it's in there, we've got it defined that it's us working together. No one's got any more power than the other, and we're only doing recommendations. It takes all the plumbing angst out of it, and it makes it a safe environment to have good, frank, open discussions that no one's scared of having. And that's what you're asking for out of those committees.
And I believe that's what the law and the JMAs currently prescribe. Now, if the government of the day changes the law, well, then we will have to, be a little bit more flexible, obviously. But at the moment, that's what I truly believe it means. And if tomorrow's recommendation goes through, that's Waiora me, I'm happy to have that discussion with Maria Napier. Maria? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Gary.
Warren, is the wording wrong then in co-governance? Because it sits in the JMA and it doesn't sit around the council table. So, and I think that's where the confusion comes, especially in the public's mind, and probably in my own mind. So, if it's in, so do we need to change the wording? So, as a co-management, or it's got to be, it's got to have some sort of other description or that distinguishes it from the governors who are the people who sit around this table, not around a JMA.
Yeah, the thing is, you're right, the co-governance has a big hangover from what started off with the Three Waters side of things. So, but when you look at that, you've got governors from iwi and you've got governors from regional council. So it is a co-governance oversight of that committee. So it's, I think, touching on Robbie's point, it's the public perception, and that sort of thing, getting their heads around. In that particular case, that's what governance means.
Yeah, and can I add to that? And I think the word, I said this is in a really polite way. Co-governance to iwi means there's meaningful reason to be sitting around the table having the discussion. And I think that's important, that wording to them. But as I said, we need it defined.
And as long as iwi articulate that.
Because otherwise, what is it? It's another talk fest. Actually, no, we're governors coming together to have a good, frank discussion. That gives it meaning.
Thank you. Molly.
I was just going to add that we are planning and preparing a relationship with our Waikato River iwi, the ones that we have our joint management agreements for the new year. And so these sorts of discussions will be no doubt part of that relationship hui. So thank you. Right, so in the joint management agreements, there are a number of operational matters that are covered. The way that we undertake planning processes, and you're going to be talking about PC1 next in that workshop. So that's the practical example. Resource consenting processes, compliance monitoring, state of the environment monitoring, and some customary activities. So all of these things are set out in the Resource Management Act. And the Joint Management Agreement describes and prescribes the way that we will work together with iwi on these things. We have had joint management agreements in place for more than a decade, and they operate really efficiently, really effectively. Staff in the various areas across council have found ways to innovate, I guess, so that we can deliver the things that we need to under these agreements. an example of that is automation of resource consenting applications, sending them out to iwi. So there is no additional steps required for staff. They go into the system and automatically emails are sent to iwi, notifying them of the applications that have been received. So just an example of the sorts of things that we do under joint management agreements, and the opportunity to emphasise that they do work really effectively. Next slide, let's see what's coming up. It's going to be a surprise for me.
Warren, can I just ask a question on that one?
The previous slide.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Marley, obviously I've got a bias towards streamlining things, and I see, you know, when you look at the joint management JMA, and then you got it's involved in the resource consents. RMA planning's not so critical, but resource consents. Is there a consistency, particularly if you take the Waikato River and you've got the different iwi in there? Is there a consistency on the process there, or they all have to be managed differently in terms of each part of the river catchment?
Each of the JMA contain generally the same functions that we must work together on, but they are slightly unique to each of the river iwi, and that's because each of the JMA were negotiated at that individual level. Yeah, I guess many of the things that we do alongside river iwi are the same and can be duplicated. And in terms of streamlining, staff and river iwi ways look for opportunities to do that, to make life that much easier, efficient, effective. And so a couple of examples, PC1, but also Waiora, where river iwi and council have decided it's actually far more efficient to have the one conversation and not 5 separate conversations and get to 5 different outcomes.
Marley, do you see this as an expansion of PC1?
No, nothing, not at all.
No.
No. Next slide.
Okay, so here we've just identified some major projects that we have achieved in recent years with our JMA partners. Transfer of water monitoring functions to Tū Whare Toa Māori Trust Board, Lake Taupo monitoring functions. So, you know, this is a successful piece of work that previous council initiated, developed, approved alongside Tū Whare Toa Māori Trust Board. We've gone through a number of reviews of this transfer of functions, and we can confirm that the outcomes that were expected at the time of approving this piece of work have been achieved. It's going really well.
Can I just ask a question? I understand that's the first and only time we've transferred functions under the RMA.
Yes, and
Yeah.
at the time, we were the first and only council to have done that successfully, and I'm not sure that since any other councils have actually been managed to do anything similar. Yeah. The process is quite complex, which probably puts off many councils in iwi going down that pathway. But Tū Whare Toa Māori Trust Board felt it was really important to give it a crack. And so together we went through quite a comprehensive process of identifying what potentially could be transferred. And those water monitoring functions were identified as appropriate to do so.
And you managed to do it during COVID, May 2022. Yeah. Yes.
Got an award, yeah. So it's something that council should be really proud of.
So can I ask Marley there so the transfer of monitoring functions, that's rather than being a collaborative discussion about oversight, you're getting into functions there. So to me, and I want to drive costs out, that's giving a monopoly to one group to do a job. So what critique have we got as a regional council and making sure that we're getting the best value for money?
So I'll jump in there really quickly. There was a whole business case done on.
Yep.
And oversights that where potential savings were able to be recognised and that sort of thing. So there are a whole lot of outcome targets and as part of that piece of work to make sure that there was efficiencies in basically doing that, going through that stage. Yep. Yep. There's oversight of it.
Under the RMA,
Oh,
it's
you-
reversible.
Sorry, I was meaning the oversight and economic benefit of it is ongoing under the RMA. Yeah, you could take that back if you wanted to. So it is reversible to Noel's point. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to what Warren has said, the RMA has got, I guess, quite a high threshold in terms of being able to meet the requirements to be able to transfer functions, and that depth of analysis was required, and also public consultation as well. So it was quite a comprehensive process that we went through. As part of transferring those functions, council also put in some measures, I guess, to make sure that the job is not only implemented well, but the ongoing delivery of the function is carried out well by Tū Whare Māori Trust Board. And the analysis of transferring those functions did identify that Tū Whare Māori Trust Board could do the job well and do it more cheaply than what council could. So that was a reason why council decided it was a good thing to do. Just really briefly, the second piece of work that's identified on this slide is strategic work programs. We do have one currently with Waikato Tainui. The program is a 3-year program. It identifies the shared priorities between Waikato Regional Council and Waikato Tainui, and then pieces of work that both organisations will collaborate on in order to deliver those things faster, cheaper, all of those sorts of things. So that strategic work program spanned 3 years. It's now coming to a bit of a conclusion. The co-governance committee has oversight of those things that sit within the strategic work program, and so we deliver regular updates to the co-governance committee. We've had feedback that it's been a really useful thing to do because it means that over a 3-year period, there are some outcomes identified for the work that we do together, and the co-governance committee can continue having oversight and monitoring of those things. And so we've managed to achieve some good outcomes with strategic work programming.
So sorry to interrupt again, but so where does Waikato River Authority fit into there? So it's supposedly doing monitoring as well and all that sort of thing. So
the strategic work program doesn't include, I guess, the work that the Waikato River Authority does directly, because really what's in the strategic work program is operational work, the way that the things that we're delivering in the organisation in the various areas. Where the Waikato River Authority might intersect is if there is a project that's identified by both River Iwi and the council that could potentially be funded by the Waikato River Authority, and then that might lead to a joint funding proposal. Okay. So just to wrap that one up, we've found that strategic work programming is really a useful thing to do, and so we'll continue doing that with Waikato Tainui and explore opportunities to do that with the other river area as well. Te kaupapa kaitiaki. So I mentioned when talking about the pending Parehauraki collective treaty settlement that we do have a similar example already of treaty settlement that requires us to develop an integrated catchment management plan with iwi. Ngāti Tūwharetoa in their comprehensive treaty settlement negotiated exactly that. And so we have developed jointly with Ngāti Tūwharetoa through Te Kotahitanga, their PSGE, and Taupo District Council, a high-level strategic document called Te Kaupapa Kaitiaki. That plan was adopted back in, I want to say 2022. 2022, so towards the end of the previous term with council, and so it's been in operation now for the last 3 years. Slightly different to the Parehauraki collective arrangement where council decides whether or not to deem it straight into the RPS. This plan sits outside of the RPS, but council must go through a process to, I guess, incorporate it or give it consideration. I can't remember the exact term that's used in the treaty settlement, but essentially give effect to it when we go through a review process of our policies and plans. Until that time, then when we do resource consenting processes, our staff need to take into consideration Te Kaupapa Kaitiaki.
Just a quick question. Could you explain the translation of Te Kupu o Kanapanapa? I didn't understand why it's different than Te Paritoa when we're doing it. It's just, what does it mean?
It is a tūwharetoa term that I wouldn't want to try and translate for you on the spot. But I can come back to you. Is that okay?
If you wanted to ask.
Yeah, the Te Kaupapa Kaitiaki, the top, I didn't, just wondered if there was a translation on that. And the other thing is the map to the right-hand side there. What are the boundaries on that?
So the map includes the area that, so in the purple, the
Yes.
larger area is the area that applies to Te Kaupapa Kaitiaki, the high-level strategic document for the taupōro here. And within that is the joint management agreement area with Te Wharetoa Māori Trust Board. So 2 different documents, 2 different purposes, and actually 2 different organisations as well. It's a little bit complicated down in the Taupo area. So just to explain a bit about that, you have Te Wharetoa Māori Trust Board, who are the owners of the lake bed through a treaty settlement from many years ago. And they are the entity that hold the responsibility for the Waikato River Treaty settlements with Waikato Regional Council. Fast forward a number of years, and Ngāti Tūwharetoa, through their comprehensive treaty settlement, established a PSGE, post-settlement entity called Te Kotahitanga. And so they hold the treaty settlement responsibilities for Te Kaupapa Kaitiaki. So we do have treaty settlement obligations to both Ngāti Tūwharetoa organisations. It does mean more complexity in that area, but we've managed to navigate ourselves through that over the past, well, it's been 6 years since the comprehensive treaty settlement. And it is quite straightforward if you take the principled approach of you have obligations to both. And I will come back to you with translations around Te Kaupapa Kaitiaki as well.
The part that I was asking was on the right-hand side there, that the map there's got no place names sort of around it to give us a context of what the actual area is. Like, is that
Right. Yeah.
Taupo there?
Well, we can get that reference to you later, Gary. This is just an illustration.
Mm.
There's no scale or anything there. Keith, did you have a question on this?
Oh, sorry.
No? Cool. You've used your quota of questions for the day. Thank you.
Oh, now we're getting into mana whakahonoarohe. This is a fairly new kaupapa for Waikato Regional Council. This provision, mana whakahonoarohe, has been in the Resource Management Act for quite a number of years. So from recollection since 2017. But there has been little uptake across the country and none in the Waikato regional area until just recently, where we have now had 6 or 7 iwi initiate with us. There are specific things that a mana whakahonoarohe must contain, and there are also timeframes that you must work through, meet as well. The key timeframes are that mana whakahonoarohe must be concluded within 18 months of initiation, unless otherwise agreed, and it must contain RMA planning, monitoring, dispute resolution, and hearing commissioner matters. Everything else is discretionary. So there must be agreement to anything else that is included within a mana whakahonoarohe. And also there must also be agreement with regard to how those provisions around RMA planning, monitoring, dispute resolution, and hearing commissioners is articulated within the agreement.
No.
So most of the ones in the Peri Haraki area are most of them are part of the settlement, as I understand, the Peri Haraki. So will the mana whakahonos go once the Peri Haraki settlement is achieved? Once there's a higher level document, do these get?
That's a really good question, and probably one that nobody can answer at this stage, because we don't know what is going to turn up in the mana whakahonoarohe agreement. But given that it covers things like monitoring, dispute resolution, hearing commissioners, some of the stuff may not be addressed as a result of the Parehauraki treaty settlement. So there's probably space for both of these things to be in existence.
I just wonder whether we need to keep it in the back of our mind. Certainly when the subsequent JMAs are negotiated, that we don't have 2 different processes running at the same time. Where we can, we should be looking to crash it down into one. So just please remember that.
Yeah.
Yep. Ben?
Just a comment for the new councillors. This first point here is that the iwi authority can initiate this, and we have no ability to say no. It must be initiated within 90 days. The 5 Hauraki iwi issued 2 days before the 90 days period, so it was rushed in the very end of our term, and we haven't yet had a meeting with them except at staff level. So
Just overarching, what is mana whakahono, all right? You know, what is that?
It's an agreement on how council and iwi will work together.
All iwis, not just one particular.
No.
Let's jump to the next slide, because it might help to illustrate many. There are many iwi within the Waikato region. And so a couple of things. Council and iwi can enter into these relationship agreements individually, or they could be collective in nature, both with councils collectively or iwi collectively. And we've got a bit of an example of that in this list here that I'll take you through. Essentially, this slide is covering the mana whakahonoarohe that have been initiated with Waikato Regional Council, so they're currently active. Starting with Ngāti Tūrangi Tukua, this is a hapu of Ngāti Tūwharetoa, and so their area of interest, their rohe, is down in Turangi. They initiated mana whakahono a rohe back in April, and so we're working towards completing that process by the 7th of October. We've had an initial hui, and we're having follow-up hui as well to go through the negotiation process. We will be checking in with council at key milestones to check direction and make sure that council is up to speed with how conversations are going.
Just to clarify, you've said it's a hapu, but in actual fact, it's got a legal status as an iwi as well. Because only iwi can, yeah, so just to clarify.
Yes, so Ngāti Turangi Tukua have their own treaty settlement as a result of the Genesis Power Station that's down in Turangi, and land that was acquired by the Crown back in the day for that purpose. So fast forward a number of years, and a long-standing conversation Ngāti Turangi Tukua have been having with the Crown. Anyway, the Crown and Ngāti Turangi Tukua came to a treaty settlement, and long story short, Ngāti Turangi Tukua as a result is considered an iwi authority and meet that test, I guess, and definition under the Resource Management Act, which might be important when we get further along this slide. But before we get to that, next on the list are those hauraki iwi that have initiated. So there is a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tara Tokonui, Ngāti Pawa, Ngāti Hako, Ngāti Tumutumu, and Ngāti Tamatera. So this isn't all of the pare hauraki iwi, only some. But there is an opportunity through this process of negotiation to check in with other pare hauraki iwi to see if they want to join the agreement, the collective. And on the other side, I guess, the councils, other councils, territorial authorities in the area have also been invited to participate in a joint collective agreement. Last on the list, Ngāti Mahuta ki te Hauauru. This hapu are located on the west coast around Aotea Whaharoa, and they are a hapu of Waikato Tainui. We are currently going through the negotiation process, although there is a need to clarify whether Ngāti Mahuta are an iwi authority, because only an iwi authority can initiate a mana whakahono arohe. So we are still waiting on written confirmation from Waikato Tainui that they agree to Ngāti Mahuta being considered an iwi authority in their own right.
Robbie, you have a question?
Yeah, the 5 hierarchy iwi in that discussion that involves us and I'd imagine hierarchy, Coromandel, and most probably
Matamata.
Matamapiako. If any of us pulled out of that said we don't see value in it, what would happen there? Would that mean that no, it doesn't continue, or could it continue without some of that representation? Or they can't. No, but you can get to the end and you say, well, I can't see value in it. You can't.
It's mandatory to set it up. So you're a breach of legislation if you say we're going to no longer be involved.
Even after the 18 months.
The 18 months is when the agreement is due.
Yeah. So what about if you can't come to agreement at that end, is what I'm asking.
After 18 months?
Yeah.
You'd have to agree collectively, all the parties involved, to extend that time frame.
Yeah.
Oh, so it just continues and okay.
Until you
That's what I'm trying to get to. I was just, what happens when you can't get to an agreement at the end of?
Yeah. There is provision to extend on by agreement, but collectively we'll be doing our very best to make sure there is shared understanding, common understanding and an agreed position, so that we're not getting to a stage after 18 months where we can't land an agreement.
There's a lot of voices around a table like that, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
And Marley, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the 5 groups have indicated, the 5 iwi groups have indicated that they're happy to talk in the same room at the same time rather than 5 individual meetings, etc., going on and on. So
Yeah.
yeah, for efficiencies, obviously, for all of us. Yeah.
Mm. And in those discussions, I just wanted to reassure you that at least at a staff level, and I have heard that iwi agree that the pending treaty settlement should be taken into consideration, so that we're anticipating what might be coming, what is coming, and making sure that what we're doing now in this mana whakahonoarohe space is not going to be out of step with or duplicate what's coming down the pipeline. So that's mana whakahonoarohe. Next in the PowerPoint slide is marine and coastal area claims, but I propose we don't get into this kaupapa because there's quite a bit to cover. We haven't had a conversation about this with council previously. And so let's leave it for another day. It's 12 o'clock, which means lunch is arriving, and it will give myself and Victoria the opportunity to see what might be next in terms of after the lunch break.
Yeah, thanks, Marley. Victoria, I was just acknowledging that we've hijacked your presentation and in that space, but hopefully now there's an understanding of where we are as a council and the various interactions we have with iwi around our rohi. So just interested in your input from the other organisations that you've dealt with and that sort of thing, whether these are the sorts of agreements and that sort of thing that other organisations have in place, or are there other types of arrangements that are maybe a less formal, structured, legislated situation? I'll just grab you. I'll just whack that. Yeah, I know it's been a long time.
It's a mixture of both. So a lot of people have things that have come out of treaty settlements that are very similar to what you've had. Other areas, as an example, in Bay of Plenty, where they started with the Kaituna River diversion, started as a non-statutory thing of people just getting together saying, hey, we want to address this issue. And then it became sort of formalised through the treaty settlement later. So it can be a real combination, but it's the same idea of just having the groups together collectively working on the issues. So yeah, I mean, a lot of those things, as Marley said, there are slight variations around the country and exactly how they work, but very, very similar mechanisms to what you've got here.
And just, I know you said earlier that you can't speak for iwi and how they feel, but just asking the question, I guess, is information, are you getting information that these types of things aren't working for them, or I guess that's a generalisation,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, it's a really big question. I mean,
yeah.
and it differs around the country, right? It probably differs within one region.
Yeah, true. Probably.
I guess, I think, you know, people here, I think that these have been really good things that have been put in place to allow the conversations to happen. And that's a really positive thing. And knowing that, you know, many of you referred to it, often the process can be quite frustrating for all parties, right? Having got to jump through all the hoops and so on. So I think definitely where there's open, honest engagement, people really appreciate that opportunity to do that. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I must admit, one of the things that is at forefront of our minds is the fact that local and central government, more so local government, the wheels turn really slowly, and we're also well aware of capacity, you know, both from iwi's perspective and our
Absolutely.
own, and that sort of thing, and especially like the mana whakahano arohis, potentially we could have a number of these coming into our space. From all the various iwi and just our capacity to actually handle that sort of, you know, that wave. We'll go back to the wave.
Yeah.
That wave of stuff that potentially, hits our beach. So.
And I think was it Keith asked earlier about the resources that come with those settlements sometimes, because you know there's often that idea or that issue that central government, not just in treaty space, in any space,
Yep.
says to local government, do this, do this, do this, do this, but no resource that comes with it.
Yep.
So it's really good that there's that thinking and that there is that specified resource often that comes with it so that it can be supported. Yeah, as you say, the things do turn slowly, and that's for everyone. Like you say, Marley talked about how complicated some of those. I mean, the RME came in 1991, and you're the first council to do a Section 33 in 2022. So that's a sort of an example of how long it can take for these things to come about. Which is frustrating sometimes, but the reality of our systems as well. Yeah.
Keith.
Yeah, just following up on your, I guess, question statement, Warren, and this is probably for Victoria and Marley. What's the practicality of, because for me, I'm a honky, I'm quite open about that. You're dealing with every family, Maori family in our region, and we're having to negotiate as a formal body with each of those. What's the chances of getting, say, all the Maniapoto or the Tainui groups, or just do it on a full catchment basis, like, we've got Waihao and we've got Waikato and Waipa. It's a chance that sometime we can rationalise it so it's not so cumbersome in time and money and process.
So an observation about treaty settlements at the current time, the central government do prefer, I guess, collective groups. I can't recall the term off the top of my head, but for example,
Large natural grouping.
that's it, large natural groupings. Thank you. So that tends to be the approach taken by the Crown. The Pare Hauraki Collective is an example of that, where the 11 Hauraki iwi have been brought together into one collective agreement through the treaty settlement process. So there's an example of, I guess, catchment-based treaty settlements, and we're seeing more and more of that. And also what's coming out in terms of obligations.
But in terms of that, you got the catchment grows over into the basically into the western catchment in the Hauraki settlement. So it's not a true catchment, is it?
Not aligned with what regional council would consider a catchment. So it doesn't naturally align with our catchment boundaries, but there is close alignment, particularly in that Hauraki example. And so the Waiho Piako Coromandel catchment plan is an outcome that will be, I guess, similar to what council would normally do in terms of catchment planning. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Marley. Right, so councillors will move on to lunch, and we're looking at half an hour, so potentially back here about 20 to 1. Thank you. PC1 will be probably